Welcome to the Fantasy Formula One podcast. I am Paul. That is Ben.
Hey.
Thank you for joining our conversation. It is a conversation we would be having anyway. Feel free to hit us up on all the social medias at Fantasy Formula One Podcast, and you can email us your questions, comments, concerns at info@fantasyformulaonepodcast.com. And this whole episode is going to be, we're going to talk about fantasy, but it's not going to have too many points because now that we have 2 data points for sprint weekends, I want to actually run more stats and stuff like that. So we will have that episode be next week because we have there's no race this weekend. So we'll have something to talk about next week as well. This episode is right after the Miami Grand Prix.
It is.
And it was fascinating. The second sprint race of the calendar.
Oh, that's right.
And which I was a little confused about back to back. And real quick, and this isn't even on the things we're going to talk about.
What are you even doing?
I have no clue. We're going to start over.
No, I'm messing with you. We can go off.
But
no, that's the
sprint weekends. Okay. The sprint qualifying is not part of like the points. This is the second sprint in a row. If you look at it, there is no points for sprint qualifying. Your teams are not locked until after the sprint qualifying.
Okay. So the actual sprint is the only thing that counts.
The actual sprint is the only thing that counts, which is still blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Because since the beginning of all this, it's you have your practices, but as soon as you start qualifying, then you're locked in.
Right.
Negative. And I thought it was a fluke last sprint weekend. Turns out, I guess it's just the way it works now.
But you know what? These are the moments that validate our existence on this podcast. We're picking out those nuances.
Yeah.
And if you're here, it's because you care about that information. So thank you. And here we are doing that thing. So
absolutely. And this is not all what we had planned to talk about, but we'll kick it off with this. Do you think, how does that impact your strategy for your picking your teams? Because now you actually get to see what they look like in earnest, racing for a qualifying position for the sprint race. Like if they qual well, do you go and put them on your team because you expect them to do well, or is it like the exact opposite?
I think it ultimately impacts me very, very little.
Okay.
Just because of the different level of prioritization that each constructor places on the sprint.
That's true.
There are still points involved, but they're not going to treat it with the same seriousness or the same level of potential on-track liability that they would for the Grand Prix. Everyone's going to be driving a little bit more defensively, so it's just like the free practices. Are there very real indicators of what might happen? Mm-hmm. Yes. Can you take them very seriously with regards to performance coming up in the Grand Prix? No,
especially now that you're allowed to touch your car again after the
You're looking only for, I think, legitimate, very real big red flags.
Gotcha.
Anything else is just speculative, which is fun, but it's just speculative.
No, I completely agree. And that's a good way to look at it. Because I was torn this week, and I was like, so I'm watching the qualifying, and somebody's doing good or somebody's doing bad, or somebody like freaking Ricardo gets 4th or whatever, qualifies 4th, I think, or he finishes 4th. But he did well in the sprint qualifying at least.
But look at Grand Prix weekend.
So it's like, okay. First off in the lineup, we're going to discuss the man of the hour, Lando Norris.
McLaren.
Yes.
Not out of nowhere, but kind of out of nowhere.
We've been waiting for it to happen, but it happened to me, it seems sneakily.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to get some upgrades. And then they've been downplaying it so much. Like, we're not going to do good, so have a little bit of time.
Yep.
Oh, no. And then, boom, out comes...
And consistently, it's been Red Bull, and then Ferrari's like, I got next. I got next. I got... What the hell, Orange?
Right?
And so all of a sudden, there's other players.
Yeah.
There's other players on the grid, and it's not just Ferrari waiting for their turn or waiting for Max to sneeze at the wrong time, It's
right. And maybe they'll start earning that now Lando Norris is $24.4 million
on fantasy?
On fantasy. So maybe he'll start learning that paycheck now.
I don't think so. I think it's
still over, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
from a fantasy perspective, if he's more expensive than either Ferrari driver, he's too expensive.
Yeah. And especially because he spun out. He got DNF the sprint weekend, the sprint race. So that was negative 20 points. So he finished the race with 25 points.
Yeah.
He would have had 45 points, but even then that just puts him in line with Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc.
Right. Well, and that's exactly it. He's got to win, but you look at Charles Leclerc, he's consistently third, fourth. Lando is fifth, sixth, seventh, fifth. So that's gonna there's definitely a trade off in fantasy points there
For sure. How many races? How about this? If he wins next week, right? Because and we'll get to it. Actually, it's going to be next about was it that Max Verstappen had some tire issues? It wasn't broken, but his tires weren't lined up, great for the track or whatever. Sure. Or was it Max with the tire issues? You had McLaren bringing their upgrades. Pierre Gasly was doing really well until he got sent to the back. How many weeks for you as a fantasy player? How many weeks does he have to win? Like if he wins next week, is that a positive enough trend for you to try and replace him as your key player and rearrange your team?
So drop a Ferrari driver.
Drop a Ferrari driver, and assuming if you can even have the money, because you and I are both running like $5 million surpluses on some of our teams.
Okay, yeah, fair, fair. Puberty at age 40.
But it has to be a certain amount. Like how many positive progression points do you need to get before you're going to take that risk?
So I mean, this is his second time on the podium this season.
I don't know about, and for me though, it's not. He's definitely not worth it if he gets P2 or P3. He needs to start winning and getting those points to have him multiply up.
Okay,
that's my opinion.
So it's a tall order.
Yeah,
but if he gets 2 more wins, if he gets 2 more wins
back to back, or just in general,
I mean, absolutely. If he gets 2 back to back, because that means there's something way too consistent to ignore.
Okay.
I'll say this: if he gets the podium, 2 times in a row after this, I would make the switch.
Okay, interesting.
I would at least drop Perez from one of my teams and
try and get him on there.
Norris.
Yeah, no, I agree because I have one of my teams. I was able to get Max Verstappen with the Ferrari and the Red Bull.
Yeah.
And then you have to have like some of the other guys on there. And I don't think I'm at the point where I'm going to get rid of Max for Lando yet. However, the team I have that has Sergio Perez as the lead driver, as soon as Max wins, as soon as Lando Norris wins again or gets on the podium another time or two, then there might be some rearranging there to try and have Lando replace like a Sergio Perez or maybe one of the lower Ferraris, but I just don't know. I just need to get more convinced.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the potential for that to happen is there just because this is also coming off of a couple of major upgrades for McLaren that seem to have made a difference, a very notable difference.
For sure.
So we'll see. No, that's exciting.
I would be super stoked if now suddenly it's not a question of, because Perez is kind of towards the bottom, like of the top. Like you want to get Max, you want to get your Leclerc and your Sainz. You get your Perez, or kind of like those 3 kind of right around there, and then there's Max. But as soon as Lando Norris bumps Verstappen down into that group, bumps Perez out. Well, shoot. Now we get to reinvent the game.
Sure.
The last half of the season.
So again,
that would be awesome.
I would, and at this point we're measuring in fractions of impact. Fractions of a percent of impact.
Correct.
But so I would make that switch out for Lando versus either of the Ferrari drivers or for Perez. I wouldn't say that for Max. Like even if Max doesn't win the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
At this point, the way he said it himself this weekend was like, hey, listen, if P2 is me having a bad weekend, life is pretty good.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
the dude doesn't need to win to still be the best in my mind.
No, completely agree.
It's just that we have one more serious player to consider now, which is great.
No, and that's a good way to look at it because as soon as Max is having his off day, he's as good as we ever hope Sergio Perez or Charles Leclerc or any of them will ever be.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Next in the lineup, Kevin Magnussen. Dude had not 1, not 2, but 5 time penalties during the sprints and the qualifying and the Grand Prix and the whatever. And I quit keeping notes about what he did to get a time penalty. One of them was put out Sargent, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
But
I mean, and it's so frustrating because the guy's been so consistent that like Haas has been so solid this season.
Yeah.
And again, Magnussen's on 2 of my teams just because, you can count on him to move up or to at least not crash. And he didn't DNF, but
he didn't. But
no, it's not great.
No. And this is something that we could get some help on is there are rules about how many sort of penalties you can get in F1 before it literally, I'm going to use the best term I know here, affects your driver's license. Right?
Okay,
and I've heard the announcers being like, hey, you can't just walk around collecting all these penalties and not have it impact you.
And that's the weird thing. This dude is the opposite of a rookie. He's an old man on the grid.
Yeah.
So that's bizarre.
And so I'm curious if anybody knows like where out there in viewer land, if you know those rules or you have links or stuff, by all means send them to me. I'm going to do some research, but I know there's a whole lot. At that point, we're getting out of the fantasy. We're getting out of the race. We're going into qualifications to be an F1 driver. And
Yeah.
that's a
outside
whole
of our
nother
purview.
thing. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So I'll take any help you guys have. Feel free to send it to us.
I think you mentioned
Yeah.
Magnussen, which leads us to a kind of
yeah.
an organic transition to
That's true.
Logan Sargent.
Very well put.
So this is a tough spot to be in. This is the Daniel Ricciardo discussion from last week,
Yeah.
or 2 weeks ago rather, where things have not been going well for a particular driver. Some things are completely out of your control. There's the ever-present risk of mechanical issues. And there's ultimately, also there's 19 other drivers that you have no control over. So when you have actual driving performance issues on your own, and then you come across a situation that's completely out of your control, how much do we point the finger at that driver, at Logan Sargent? Because this was not his fault, but at the same time, it's like, oh, Logan
It
crashed
still
again.
happened.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I completely agree, because he was, to use the Wild West expression, he was in a gunfight. He was sitting there, elbows out, trying to pass, trying to defend, trying to do all of that. He was racing hard, and he was ahead of Kevin Magnussen, and which meant that, as far as I know, Kevin Magnussen, since he can see the car ahead of him, his job is to not hit the car ahead of him.
Right.
Where if I am the car ahead, or Logan Sargent in this case, he's trying to race his race, and it's on the other driver to pass him.
Right. And
So he was doing his thing, and then there you go.
And it's just, there's that razor's edge of being reckless on one end, and having and being appropriately aggressive on the I'm sorry, being appropriately aggressive is the razor's edge.
Yeah.
But you've got being reckless, or you've got being timid, and both of them have no place on the grid.
Yes.
Or
Yes,
on the
both
track.
of which will get you knocked out really quick.
Exactly. So in this case, it's do you be overly careful and as a result be not at all competitive? Or do you stay in it and be close and be in that dangerous situation when your career is already on the line?
Yeah.
I think, if Logan did err, he erred on the right side of things this time, but this may have been his last chance.
That might have been.
So we'll see.
I mean, the announcers were talking about how this might be his last chance. This might be his last race.
Yeah.
I know he was really somber going into it. But you're right. As soon as you're Logan Sargent, are you just going to let a Haas, or anybody, but a Haas, pass you? No, you're going to defend like hell. And as soon as he's like, well, no, I can't. I don't want to wreck. And then that guy had passed him. To your point, might be having the exact same conversation if you had,
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. It's going to impact your driving mannerisms. Like you go back to, I think it was week 2 when Albon crashed, and then he takes Logan Sargent's car. Everyone notices that he's driving so much more conservatively, because you don't want to crash your one remaining chassis after you are the only other guy who has crashed and gotten somebody else's car. It's going to change the way that you approach everything. And so he's in such a tough spot, because again, this crash was not his fault. He stayed right up in the race until he got knocked out by somebody else. So, but then again, we were making all the same arguments for Daniel Ricciardo 2 weeks ago, and this was kind of here's his chance. As long as no one mangles him or his car doesn't just spontaneously combust, we'll see what he can still do. And he didn't do much.
He did fine in the sprint, but he didn't do much in the actual
race. 15th overall. And again, you might think, it's a V-car problem or a baby RB problem or the paint job slowed them down. But no, Yuki Tsunoda got 7th place. That's an 8-position spread there.
And I firmly believe, based on my non-professional opinion, that do I think Daniel Ricciardo's lost a step or he's unable to drive? No. I think this is a prime example of what they said earlier on in the year, is that if Max Verstappen, the same time that got you the pole in Bahrain in 2023, puts you 8th this year, the whole field just evolved. So as soon as all the cars are evolved, you have somebody like Daniel Ricciardo, who comes in off the bench and is pulling in 5th, 6th, 7th. Well, if his car didn't evolve, or if his mesh up with that car didn't evolve, then everybody else jumps ahead 8 places, including Yuki Tsunoda. Well, now it's not necessarily a him issue; it's a him interaction with a car issue, or it's a car issue.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Like, I'm saying that it's not. I don't think his skill went away. I think his ability to drive this car specifically, since it's a different car, it might not have. And feel free to disagree with me. That's what we're here about.
And that could be. I think, if the car doesn't work for him, unfortunately, it's the car he's got if he wants to stay in F1.
True.
And and apparently he's been arguing for changes. And what I've read was that there was a change to like the what is it? The entire bottom of the car. Part of the crew is saying like, no, he's got a new one. It's not any different. It's not going to make a difference.
And some of the announcers I heard, to that point, some of the announcers I heard kind of threw him a bone, and they were like, well, there are things like the chassis or whatever, it can weaken and it could be a little more pliable, malleable, and it's not malleable. It's not anything you can really test for, but it can, there is a way.
But again, why did Yuki do so much better then?
Exactly.
It's because he's.
And I think that.
I think he's what 5'2", 5'3", and Daniel Ricciardo is taller. I'm trying to find what the differences could be.
No, you're absolutely right. And in the end, it comes down to the point that is, even if it was just you and me, if you and I are putting exact same machines, you're getting 7th, I'm getting 15th. I won't be around too long.
Right.
It's not hard for them to find somebody to put in this car and have him finish 15th.
And that's exactly it. And I take partial responsibility for this because 2 weeks ago or last week I was like, you know what? I'm putting Danny Rick on one of my teams. I believe in the guy, so I'm sorry. I jinxed him. I apologize, but now a part of me is officially saying I want to see what Liam Lawson can do.
Ooh, that's interesting. Because we've been pro opponents of Daniel Ricciardo on this podcast.
We have. But and so it was like it's not his fault. It's not his fault. It's not his fault. 15th and Yuki got 7th. Like if Yuki got 13th or 14th, it'd be like, okay, well, V-carb is still V-carb.
Yeah.
But that's a massive
Lawson's
difference.
Still their reserve driver for Red Bull, right?
Yeah, he is, and he did darn good.
And how about this? Here's what I would propose. Okay, Liam, you get one race.
Yeah.
Put him in for a race just to see. Because if Daniel Ricciardo, he has, 5-6 points of like data points. That's where I'm looking for. Talking's hard. Data points so we can see how well he's been doing.
Yeah.
Put Liam Lawson in there. As soon as Liam Lawson gives, Yuki Tsunoda a run for his money, well, there's your answer.
Right.
And that sucks. It's kind of like, man, how come the people I really love are in the hot seat? Daniel Ricciardo and freaking Sargent, man. Like the two people, I'm like, come on, I'm here with you guys.
Yeah.
Hopefully I didn't jinx it. If so, I take partial responsibility because
you know what? You can't take much responsibility for Sargent. I think Williams' management of their assets and their vehicles has been pretty abysmal.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I was so hopeful for Williams just because I thought they're taking so much more of a measured approach.
Mm-hmm.
They're going so much more statistically based. They're really going by the numbers rather than than the old baseball scout style.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a strong swing. Listen to that ball crack off the bat. Doing great.
But his girlfriend's pretty ugly.
His girlfriend's pretty. That means confidence. All that. Yeah.
Right. So I was really hopeful that there would be a turnaround there, but I haven't seen it. So
yeah, no. And anybody who hasn't seen the movie Trouble with the Curve and Moneyball, those two movies, amazing when you're talking about baseball scouting.
Yeah.
Saying. And this I have to bring up. I am loath to bring this up because I don't want to be one of those people who's like, oh, he got second place one race. What's wrong with Max Verstappen? I'm not trying to be that way. But we have to talk about it, otherwise it's not our due diligence.
Sure.
I have my opinion. Want to know what you think.
Okay.
We haven't talked about this. Is the fact that Max Verstappen lost roughly between the time from lap 33 to lap 57. Lap 57, he lost 7 seconds on Lando Norris. Is this just shows that these cars are so advanced that whichever car has clean air and no one ahead of them just can go? Or is this B? Is this a turning of the tide and showing that RB20, Max Verstappen, are not? Is this the beginning of the turn, having them not be quite the dominant force that they've been for the last 2 years?
Oh no way! I think that's the knee-jerk reaction take, and I think it's fun. But I think this speaks more to the some kind of magical upgrades that McLaren found, but not even just that. I think it speaks more to Lando Norris's skill set. Because if you look at the rest of the outcome of the race, it's largely the same cast of characters. You got Max, you got Ferrari, you got Perez in there, and then there was a huge issue with Piastri took some damage, but massive split in final positions for them. So I don't think it's a Max Verstappen problem.
Okay.
I think it's a Lando Norris good thing.
Good thing. It's Lando equals good, not Max equal bad.
That's good.
I agree.
I like
with
that.
You. I agree with you too. Like I really don't like the hype of the, oh my gosh, is this the end of it? Like,
it's not like, Max suddenly didn't get 7th place.
Yeah, no.
You know,
and he's still winning the overall championship in points and in the actual
comfortably,
comfortably,
absolutely.
So yeah, if this continues, if over the next 2 races he's second now and then he gets third and he gets 4th, like on merit, and he's like, no, everything's right, just don't know what's going on with the car.
Sure.
Then I'll start to be like, all right, maybe something's up with Red Bull, but no, I completely agree. Next on the lineup, Adrian Newey. So this is somebody who hopefully you know more about than I do. I knew he existed. I know he's like some sort of not evil, but some sort of mastermind behind the Red Bulls. But he is going to be leaving at the end of the year. Yes,
he is, and he's been a little bit tight-lipped about what he's doing next. He's kind of given the whole, we'll just see what happens. So Adrian Newey is the chief technical engineer for Red Bull. He's been a part of Red Bull for either just about or just over 20 years.
Holy jeez.
He's got 40 years in F1 cumulatively. Prior to Red Bull, he was with McLaren, and then prior to that, he was with Williams in their heyday.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so he's been around.
He's been around for a minute.
He's been a part of 12 Constructors Championship teams. So
wow, so that means like a quarter of the teams he's ever been involved, like a quarter of the years he's been in this industry, he's won a championship.
Dude lives and breathes car design.
Wow, and does it successfully. It sounds like.
Lawrence Stroll, the owner of Aston Martin, he's described Newey as a technological unicorn. And
wow.
Hamilton actually dropped hey, it would be great to have Newey on Team Ferrari next year. Excuse me. And Newey, when he was on the Beyond the Grid podcast, which is a podcast very similar to ours.
They have all the access though.
I was trying to put us on an even playing field there. But he said, I'm very flattered to have said that, and he also has alluded to regretting having a Ferrari gap in his resume. So who knows if he could go to Ferrari next year? It's again, this is where we are in that there's been nothing confirmed, but there's been a lot of talk about what if Newey went to Ferrari with Hamilton. So that's interesting.
That'd be super interesting. And maybe this is just hot goss for me now, but I'm sorry, man. As soon as I was hanging it up after a really impressive career, I think if I was hanging it up, I would just announce, hey, guys, I'm out. I'm going to go work on building a supercar somewhere.
Right.
I'm done with Formula One. If I truly was done with Formula One.
Yeah, but this was just simply him saying, I'm leaving Red Bull. It's not Bull. I'm retiring and I'm going to go, live on the Finger Lakes or anything like that. So
okay. So we'll have to see. So basically, we're just wait and see because he's being really close-mouthed.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? Okay.
I think he's doing the whole I'm giving myself time to assess what I want to do and, let the offers come in.
Gotcha.
So we'll see.
This is all hot goss.
Oh, yeah.
With hot goss, what happens?
Pure speculation.
What will happen to Red Bull after Adrian Newey leaves?
And that's a great question. And, I think that comes down to the infrastructure in place and the staffing that's in place. Is there an heir apparent to Adrian Newey? Can you replace a guy like that? Is he the leading edge of the of all of the progress that Red Bull has made in recent years as there have been rule changes, and there are more rule changes set to be made in 2026. They're going to be going to stronger electrical power plants and then fully renewable fuel systems as well. So who knows what new shortcomings and opportunities those new variables present.
Yeah.
But was that Newey who has been the one figuring out how to exploit all of those, or has he put together a really good team that stays largely in place with Red Bull? We'll see.
And we will see.
And how many people would follow him wherever he goes next?
That's true, because I don't know how all those contracts work. I imagine it's got to be somebody.
Totally in the dark on that, yeah.
So that's something some y'all can, out there in viewer land, by all means, tell us how that works. We'll talk about it here, because that'd be really interesting to learn.
Absolutely.
The last thing we have for today is we have another F1 playlist. Last week was Taylor Swift.
Yes.
And this week is
this week we're borrowing from the Queen catalog of songs. So following Miami, we're going to start with McLaren because they took the top spot. I got 2 songs here. One is "Don't Stop Me Now," "Don't Stop Me Now,"
Don't stop.
And then secondary song option for McLaren would be "I'm in Love with My Car" because they got all the upgrades. And then Red Bull is, since they got second place this week, we got Now I'm Here. But then what was wholesome, super wholesome this week was like Max Verstappen being like, if it had to be anyone, I want it to be Lando.
Yeah.
And like he just took the whole week with class, let everything roll off his back. He was just super chill about the whole thing. So
was, yeah.
Honorary second option song would be "You're My Best Friend." And then I felt bad this week. Ferrari. I mean, again, like I alluded to earlier, they're always second in line to win, and then all of a sudden, whoop, Norris shows up.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give Ferrari Under Pressure, and The Show Must Go On.
Under pressure.
And then Mercedes is, again, I think now like firmly an upper mid-tier team.
Yeah.
Like there's not much they can do. So I'm just going to give them a Let Me Live. For V-Carb / Baby RB, I got one for each driver. For Yuki Tsunoda, I got the Miracle because 7th place.
That's huge.
In a stacked field, man.
Yeah.
Good job, Yuki. Then Daniel Ricciardo down at 15th place. Who Wants to Live Forever off the Highlander soundtrack. I mean, the sun may be setting, if someone's showing up with a big broadsword, watch out, Daniel, because immortality may not be all it's cracked up to be.
No, it can be only one.
Dude, this is why we do this.
Absolutely.
Right. Aston Martin, you got Alonso, and then you got Lance Stroll. I think there's like an 8-position spread there. Again, it's just, man, it's got to be getting frustrating for Alonso.
Yeah.
So I'm going slightly mad. Alpine. Okay, and I got to break here real quick. I found a meme for Alpine this week, and it was awesome. It was just the Jurassic Park Dennis Nedry as he's getting payment for, so it's like, look, Ocon scored our first points of the year. See, no one cares. So,
nice.
Anyway, so for Alpine, I'm going to be a little more optimistic. I'm giving them breakthrough.
Okay.
Because they finally got some points.
They did, and then Lord knows I've talked crap about them enough.
Oh no, me too. No, it's fun. We're gonna keep doing it. Haas, particularly Kevin Magnussen, just messing everything up for everyone this week. I'm giving him Killer Queen. Kick Sauber is still Kick Sauber, no points once again, so they are death on two legs. And then Williams for both of them, they got P19 and P20. Another one bites the dust.
Oh, so good.
Anyway, that's our Formula One playlist featuring the Queen.
That is great.
Library. So, I think that's going to do it for us this week, unless you had anything else you wanted to add.
That's it for me.
Okay. Hey, thanks for stopping by. If you like what you're listening to and you want to hear more, we're going to do it regardless of your opinion on that. But if you have a positive opinion of us, please leave us a 5-star review, leave a review, because that really helps us out and gets us a little more visible to others who might want to hang out with us.
Absolutely.
So, hey, thanks so much. Take care.
Cheers.